Got my fake table there.
We are live. Hello.
What's up,
What's
y'all?
up?
We are spread out today.
So we're in Florida, we're in Phoenix, and we're in Louisiana.
Yep.
Yep.
Louisiana.
Louisiana it is. If you know how to say it, then that's where you're from.
How you say it? We saying it wrong?
Louisiana.
Oh, so it's kind of like lose.
Mm-hmm. If you say
That's how he says. That's how he says. That's how he says it. That's not how I say it.
Seems like there's a civil war in Louisiana.
Well, you know, it's what's weird to me is Daniel is from a town way smaller than me, and I feel like I sound country, and he don't sound country at all. So
You don't
except,
sound like
except when I say Louisiana.
that.
all right, y'all. So hello, everyone that is watching right now. It's so weird. I cannot see the top of the screen, so I have no idea if anybody is joining us right now. So if you are watching this live, would you please comment and let us know because I don't see anything.
I see Trina.
Okay, I see that Trina commented. So if when you're watching this live, please let us know. We'll be over on sharing it to make sure that other people see us and are able to participate in the conversation. But all right, so hello Trina, we see you there. But so yeah, so okay, so that means that's good. So let us know, Trina, if you hear us okay and all that good stuff. So yeah, I can't see the top of my screen and I don't know why. But anywho, so okay, I figured out some stuff I could do. All right, so welcome to Marriage Monday, our Love for Real Marriage Monday. And we have another great topic for you all. I'm Kendra Tillman, by the way, and you all want to introduce yourselves.
Dennis and Angela Bullock.
Daniel Tillman.
Okay.
So I'm co-founder as well as Kendra's co-founder as well as Bullock's a co-founder. So welcome everybody.
Hey guys, we're looking forward to chatting with y'all tonight.
All right. So tonight we have a very interesting topic. I actually was at first I had called this about, like mindset. I know that's something that the four of us have been talking about and having conversations about. But then I was like, you know what? Is mindset really a word that people use in their everyday language? And the word I thought that people use probably instead of mindset is attitude. And attitude doesn't necessarily mean that something is negative. It just means it's like your perspective, like what, so we say that sometimes we say a person has a positive attitude, or sometimes we say they have a negative attitude, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really all about their perspective. So tonight we're going to be talking about, is your attitude, your perspective, your thoughts, your beliefs, your convictions, is it actually helping your marriage or hurting your marriage? And we want to talk about this because, again, what we've been doing is thinking about different things that we've been watching online and things that we have been listening to. Because there's a lot right now online about relationships. There's a lot of stuff online about marriage. And we just thought it would be interesting for us to talk about some of the things that we see people talking about that we know are common conversations that people are having, either like in our marriage groups, or Angie and Dennis both do counseling at their church. They've been counseling for many years now. So just those conversations that we know people are having, and maybe they need a different perspective from what they have experienced before. And so that's why we want to have this conversation tonight. And so I'm going to start us off. But before I do, did you all want to say anything before I share the clip with them?
No, your intro was awesome. Yeah.
If
Okay.
you have any questions, comments, drop them in the chat at any time, and we'll try to get to any questions throughout our conversation.
All right. So I'm gonna play this clip really quick. So, and then you all let me know too if you can hear. Hopefully you can hear it. Okay. Oh no, you can't hear it.
Make a relationship work over the long term.
Here now.
People get very selfish. So we become fixated on what we're not
Start
getting.
over.
We don't think about
Okay, I have to refresh it to start it over. Can you
Okay.
see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
on chemistry and their blueprint of like someone gives me butterflies, as opposed to having the tough conversations about what do we believe a life well lived is? What is our stance on children? What is our stance on money? What is our stance on spirituality? Like, what's our values? And what are we going to do to fight for this relationship when we have a hard time? So people don't have those conversations, and then they are not able to assess if they're actually with the right person for them. And then also people don't have the skills to make a relationship work over the long term. And people get very selfish. So we become fixated on what we're not getting, and we don't think about what we're not giving. We get in our heads, we create a lot of stories about the other person, we build up a lot of resentment. That resentment creates a lot of resistance. That resistance creates a tense physiology, and in that tense physiology, we're not attracted to each other anymore. We lose the motivation to meet each other's needs. And that's all part of the learned helplessness. And then we think, there's no better way to move forward from this than to get a divorce.
All right. So that we are going to use that as a way to help us in having this conversation that we're going to have tonight. So who wants to kind of kick us off with the conversation?
Well, I think she said a lot in that particular video. She said a lot in the video. Some of it I definitely agree with 100%. I think sometimes people can be extreme in how they present certain things. I believe that sometimes when you have an all or nothing type of attitude in certain cases, that can burn you out. And you get to learn how to take baby steps. That's why I believe that marriage is meant for you to grow in. It's not, your marriage is not going to look like when you was back in your 20s or late 20s like we were. And it's not going to look the same when you're in your 50s. And during that time, you should be learning from each other. Now, she talks about we don't have the skills. And I understand what she's saying. Yeah, we don't have the skills probably when we're younger, but we can develop those skills.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to comment on. I think that's the key. We can develop. So there's a choice to develop, and some people just don't choose to develop.
And so going back with your intro, Kendra, you talked about those convictions and beliefs. What do you believe about yourself, especially when you're confronted with conflict with your spouse? What do you believe about yourself? And then what adjustments are you willing to make in order for this to work out?
And do you believe it's important? That would be my thing. Is it important to you?
So like when you like, let's back up for just a second. When you watch that video, what part of the video stood out to you from what she was talking about? So what's one thing from the video that stood out to you, Angie, that she mentions?
Where you start focusing on what you're not getting, and so you stop giving, I think, is the top one. And then when she talked about, we don't have the skills, and then you start making stories about the other person. I was like, yeah, I definitely think our mind starts taking us on a journey against our spouse, at times.
So I think there's like three different things that you pointed out there. The one is instead of focusing on what you're getting, or instead of focusing on what you can give, you're focusing on what you can get. The other one was the stories. That one jumped out to me as well.
Me
You
too.
start making up stories in your head about your spouse. And the reason that one's very interesting to me is because your spouse is right there in front of you all the time. And instead of having a conversation, you start making up stories, right? In the absence of the conversation, you make up the stories. So that one. And then the other one, what did you say, Angie? The other one you talked about?
That's the skills. She said we don't have the skills for it.
Yeah. And I think in marriage, the whole point, because I said this when I got married, if you're anybody else that's gotten married has the same reality, and that is it doesn't come with a playbook. Just like children don't come with a playbook, right? Nobody told me this, right? So in marriage, it is really about growing together and developing the skill of communication and conversation, as your marriage progresses. If you're willing to do that, you have a much better opportunity of success than if you're not willing to. Because to me, it's easier for us to just make up the story and be mad because you're not fitting my narrative than to get out of your head, sit down, have an eye-to-eye conversation.
Yeah, because you're not going to get anywhere. But if you sit down and have a conversation, like what's going on versus assuming. He talks all the time in counseling about how assumption or assuming is not communication. And I think that's him. And I think we do that a lot. We do that a lot. We're just like, I just feel like this is probably what you're saying, or you feel, or you don't want to do that. And we're not talking about it.
And I think depending on the situation, what people's pasts were like, some people had the tendency to create scenarios. It's kind of like the old phrase is like, if I say, hey, I need you to meet me in the office. Some people in their head start creating scenarios like, okay,
like I'm in trouble.
Like, yeah, I'm in trouble, and it's going back to that attitude. And, and some of us have a negative bent. We have a negative attitude towards certain things, especially when conflict shows up and we don't know how to really process information that somebody is saying, because it comes across with tone, or you might have been hurt and all you see is I'm hurt and now I got to put defenses up. And so the skills are, there's an opportunity for you to start developing the skills. I think sometimes people believe that they can't because it's hard for them to process and navigate that particular thing. And if you got people with real bad trauma, those scenarios, those stories that they create in their head become more real than the reality of the relationship.
Yeah. Well, I think people create stories no matter what. I mean, I just think it's human nature. Even if you haven't had a traumatic experience linked to whatever the story is you're creating, like our human nature is we try to make sense of things, right? So you, in the absence of knowing the full details of what the person is feeling, you start to try to fill the gaps in yourself, right? So in your head, now you done created a whole story about this that only lives in your head, because it's not what the person said, it's not what they did, it's what you read into the situation. And I think that we do that more often than we realize. And that's one of the things that causes so much pain and like disconnects us from each other, is because we aren't telling each other what we're thinking and what we're feeling. Or if we are, we're making it about something that they haven't even said or done, right? One of the things I wanted to highlight from the video, in terms of like what we want to talk about tonight, because we're talking about, is your attitude helping your marriage or is your attitude harming your marriage? So one of the things that she said that the four of us talked about prior to tonight is that we get fixated on what we're not getting rather than we get fixated on what we're not getting rather than what we're not giving. So we spend so much of our time in the relationship thinking about what we want the other person to do for us, how we want them to change, how we want them to be different, how we want them to do this thing or that thing, but not enough thinking about what do I have to give in this relationship. And so that brought us to start to talk about what you believe in marriage, like whatever underlying beliefs that you have or convictions that you have, that is going to start to influence how you are going to respond to your spouse, right? So whatever that conviction is that you have, like whatever vows or agreements that you made in your heart prior to marriage, now that's going to start coming out in marriage, right? So for example, a vow might be that if you saw your parent, like one of your parents, let's say it was your dad, and you saw that your mom was the one always fixing the plates. Angie, you talked about this before, like you really don't like seeing that, right? Where if you saw that your mom was always fixing the plate and dad was being served, right? You might make a vow in your mind. What, Angie, what's a vow you might potentially make in your mind about that?
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So I'm not going to do that because why? What's the why behind why you wouldn't do that?
I think like for me, it wasn't that it was the serving of the plate, because when we got married, I'd make his plate. I still make his plate from time to time. It was the balance of it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I wanted to see, I don't know,
It's one-sided.
Yeah, I felt like as a little kid, it's more one-sided, like she was doing a lot. And I wanted to see it a little bit more balanced. Even as a kid, I was thinking like, wow, like she's doing this, and that. Like, and I know he's working, but like, he come home and he's just relaxing. As an adult, I get that. But I think it goes into self-vows are dangerous because it could be, an internal self-vow is what they're called, inner vows. They're dangerous because you're coming up with your own way of protecting yourself. And you're saying, I will never let that happen. So it's kind of like you're building like this, the wall keeps getting bigger because you're like, that is never going to happen. I'm never doing that because you're not going to maybe take advantage of me, misuse me, whatever, whatever you're thinking it is. And my mom, I don't even think I've ever asked my mom. My mom probably was totally cool with it. You know what I mean? But as a kid, I was like, where's her? You know what I mean? So I think that's the dangerous side to it, because just like I said, it's not, as a kid, you're coming up with your own stories and you're coming up with your own way that you are going to protect yourself. And self-vows are very adamant. Like that's never going to happen. I'm never going to do that. My kids will never go through that. My family will never experience that. And so it's kind of like you take away the opportunity for God to do what he needs to do because you made a decision that's never going to happen.
So let me dig into that a little bit, because can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I think that so it's human nature to have that protective mechanism, right? And I think we should have it. And it serves us well in certain contexts. I think we've talked about this before, where as a human, when you are, like Kendra said, making sense of your environment, that's just what humans do. That's what complex organisms, which we are one, that's what we do. Because if you see a car coming, you get out of the way, and that's just a natural reflex.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Right. And when you get married, what I think we have to realize is that we have another way of that we can allow the other person to exist in our space. And so we don't need all of those protective mechanisms that we had in place before we got married. And unless we realize that, then we'll just keep being, it'll seem as if you are just hard-nosed or hard-headed or rigid because you're keeping your old ways and not allowing space for the other person in your life.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's kind of like I'm here, Dennis is here, and then we're trying to become one. And it's like, to me, when you're becoming one, there's some things that have to leave or move to make space for the other person. So we
Mhm.
can become one. Because if I'm like this and he's like this, we're never going to go like this. Like my hands have to move so we can go like this. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's an example, but to me, you got to make space. You know.
Yep.
I think depending on what type of belief it is or attitude that you have, we have tendencies to exalt that higher. It becomes the idol of convenience, comfort, control that we have, and now it's bigger than anything else. It's like, I can't hear you because this is all I see. And until we push down that idol, we push it down for the sake of the marriage, and we submit, we surrender, we sacrifice and exalt that, then now you see that it's not about me, it's about we. It's about, how can I serve this person and love them unconditionally?
What is the idol that you are talking about? What is the idol of what?
It could be a bunch of things.
Yeah, it could be a bunch of things. It could be that belief, that inner vow that you said, well, like, I would never
Okay.
with this. That can become an idol. Or let's use an example for finances. Because I grew up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my mom told me to always keep some money to myself, and so
Yeah.
that's an example.
Keep some money to myself. So that's why we're going to always have separate bank accounts, because I just can't trust what's going to happen.
Because you could be planning to leave me, and then I'm left with nothing. Because you know what I mean. So you could be fighting for that, and there, if that's what y'all decided, fine. But that sometimes people are fighting for that, even though they haven't even really talked about it.
Yeah. Or the interval could be, going back with finances, is that I was poor. And so now that when I make money, I'm going to make sure that we're saving. We have this type of lifestyle because of how I grew up. And that becomes magnified. And so now all I see is this. I can't even see a person that's making less money, because this is what I see, because how I grew up, I'm not going to ever go that. So that's what I mean by the idol. That becomes, that thought, that belief, that attitude becomes something that's higher than the relationship sometimes.
Yeah, it can even be where you're not going back to the money example. It could even cause, so that's something that's in your psyche, right? Or in your past experience. It could be just, you saw a friend go through a similar situation where, they joined stuff together. The husband started acting crazy, took everything, she broke. And now in your mind, it's like, I love you, but she loved him too. And so not only do you keep something separate, but you didn't tell him that you're keeping it separate, right? So it's secret. So
I have a question. Do you guys feel like serving your spouse has a bad rep, maybe?
What do you mean in regards to serving?
Just in marriage, I don't know, are we quick to have that mindset in marriage that we want to serve each other? Or is it more about, like she was saying, you're focusing more on what you want? Or is it just for a selfish society or whatever?
it's a 50-50 deal. It's a coin toss, right? Sometimes in marriage, you do have folks who are trying to outserve each other. And usually I believe in that scenario, because I think that aligns with what the word teaches us. You kind of have harmony in the marriage, versus in a marriage where you're there to get what you can get. And I think in those situations, because it does not align with the spirit of giving, it does not align with the spirit of forgiveness. In those situations, you can end up in a marriage that's dry.
Okay.
Well, I want to comment on a couple of things I see from Trina. So I'm going to share these to the screen. So she was saying, this was very good. I think you're talking about the clip that we shared. Just in my 24 months, we have realized this. We quickly decided to come together to get back to what we were doing when we first started off. We are still working on it. as it takes time and being intentional about how we respect and how we talk to one another. And then she also said, because you think you know what the person is thinking and what they might say or how they might feel about a certain thing, and then the stories become real in your mind. Absolutely, they 100% do. And then this other question about what are the skills, what are the tools, how can you navigate to stop from going into these patterns? So this is something I want to say about that. I think that there is enough books, podcasts, YouTube videos, events, seminars, and so many other places where you can get tools for how to have better communication with your spouse. I think that part of the challenge that we overlook when we're trying to get to tools and resources is that there are things that we can do to start to deal with what's happening on the inside of us that is actually keeping us from doing all the things that we've already learned, right? Because we've learned a lot of things about relationships, and yet we don't always do what we know. So I would like for y'all to talk about what is it that you think keeps us from doing what we already know to do beyond like the honeymoon phase of marriage, right? So in the honeymoon phase, you might be trying to do all the things, get all the tools, read all the books, go to all the conferences, right? You're excited, you want to learn everything that you can learn. And then you kind of get settled in to the marriage and you like, I'm not learning nothing new because this joke over here getting on my nerves, right? So what is it? What do you think it is that keeps us from doing what we already know to do?
Well, I think, and this is just an opinion, this is not something I just kind of looking at how when I deal with couples and as I'm listening to them, there's certain needs that have not been met that people are looking for within their spouse. And there's kind of that expectation, now that I'm married, I expect my be met. And then I think where sometimes the resistance comes in, and again, I'm probably be a little, I don't know if I want to be able to explain it right, but I think people have these preferences that I want it this way. This is how it's supposed to look. And then when it don't turn out the way it look, you ever heard that phrase that I never thought that this is going to happen in my life. I never thought it would look this way. I think that's where sometimes people have this ideal in their head and it becomes this preference. And this is how I want it to look. It's kind of like the ladies think about their wedding. I have, this is what I will look, or even when we're dating, I think sometimes, and excuse me, ladies on this one, I think sometimes ladies and men too, so I'm both of them. I think people have their ideal what their mate looks like or what their wife will look like or what they have this ideal, and then when it don't turn out, it's kind of this resistance, like it's shock. And so as they go through the shock of, I didn't think it was going to be like this. I didn't think that they was going to treat me like this. I didn't think it was going to turn out like this. I thought he was going to have more money, but now he has debt. Yeah. And you go into the shop, and it depends on the person on the inside, the younger you who is fighting to say, you know what, I'm going to push past this. And I'm going to open myself to learn. I'm going to open myself to grow, whether it's listening to podcasts or reading a book. For me, I go back, it was back in 2008. And we was just kind of just always bumping heads. Yeah. And
2008 was a year, boy.
I felt like I was coming out of my shell. I was like, literally, I thought we need to fix this because I'm not happy being the way I am. And so it was a book by Jimmy Evans, Marriage on the Rocks. And when I started reading that book, it literally just opened me up. It literally opened me up. It was very, very meaty, had some good context to it. And I was able to understand it, but it opened my heart. And I knew it was God, I really knew was God when I was reading the pages of the book, because after I read it, I want to make this change. They had scriptures laced in there. I want to make this change, and I did. I started opening myself to that whole process.
So James 4, Kendra, can you put that on the screen? James 4:1. And do 4:1 through, I don't know, 2, 4:1 and 2. It says, I'm gonna read the Amplified version. It says, what leads to strife? And I think that's what we're talking about in marriage. Why are we fighting versus coming together? And so what leads to strife, discord, and fuse? And how do conflicts, quarrels, and fightings originate among you? Do they not arise from the sensual desires that are ever warring in your bodily members? You are jealous and covet what others have, and your desires go unfulfilled. And so you become murderers. To hate is to murder, as far as your hearts are concerned. You burn with envy and anger and are not able to obtain the gratification, the contentment, and the happiness that you seek. So you fight in war you do not have because you do not ask. And I like what Kalisha put or posted, because I think it aligns with this. It's we have within this comes from within ourselves, where we are selfish, right? We want what we want, and when we are not getting it, we throw tantrums. Yeah. And that's what we do as even as grown folks, is we don't want to go first. We don't want to always be the one to give in. And we say to ourselves, I've done that before, it didn't work, he's still acting a fool. And so I'm just waiting on him to get his act together. And I think that's what we do in marriage, as far as why we get to that point where we're no longer willing to give it a try. We're no longer willing to try the things that we know that we've heard will work, because we tried it and it didn't work for us. So that must work for everybody else, but it don't work for me. Mm-hmm. That whole 1 Corinthians 13 chapter worked for everybody else, but I've been loving this joker for 10 years and he's still acting crazy. So we get weary in well-doing, and we start to give up.
Yeah, I think I thought that was really good. I think sometimes we do quit a little too quickly, and I know sometimes when you say 10 years, that's a long time, but I think we do get weary in the well-doing. I think that was really,
especially if it's like managing a household, working and looking like, well, you should do that because I'm doing this or whatever. And I think even if you are dealing with somebody who's a knucklehead for the last 10 years, I've been trying to be patient. I've been praying for you. I've been serving, and I'm tired. You know what I mean? So I do think it's easier to just be like, I'm just gonna have an attitude.
Well, I think that the whole thing about us being selfish, I 100% think that yes, human beings are selfish. And I also think there's more to it than just you're selfish. It's like there's a reason why you are being selfish, because the same person that is selfish in marriage and wants everything their own way is the same person that's over here giving everything they got for their children, right? They're doing whatever, however many late nights and preparing food and doing things. And so sometimes I think the reason why people are feeling selfish in marriage is because they feel that they've given everything that they can give to this relationship, and it's not being reciprocated, right? And so sometimes the reason why people can feel selfish is because they feel like they have been selfless to the point where they are not getting their needs met, right? They have needs as well, and those needs aren't being met. And so I wanted to go back to that verse that Daniel just read in James chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. What leads to the unending quarrels and conflicts among you? Do they not come from your hedonistic desires that wage war in your bodily members, fighting for control over you? You are jealous and covet what others have. Your lust goes unfulfilled, so you murder. You are envious and cannot obtain the object of your envy. So you fight in battle you do not have because you do not ask it of God. So one of the things that actually stood out to me in this verse is it talks about your lust going unfulfilled, right? So what do you think in this context? What is lust in the context of this scripture? What do y'all think?
Well, lust is usually just an ordinary type of desire that you have. And, I think it's not necessarily connected with sex, but it's connected with a inordinate type of desire. Like me say, I don't know, let's say I want to have a house off the beach. Okay. And I'm trying to push all my desires towards that. And I'm pushing her. I said, this is what I want. This is what I've wanted all my life. This is a dream of mine.
Yep.
I don't understand how come you don't see that.
And I could be like, I don't want a house on the beach. That's too expensive. And you could be like, you are keeping me from my dream. And now you could be like, I resent you secretly or verbally or whatever, because I'm like, no.
Yeah. It could be this too. It could be where I want my kids to have the best. So I want to go to this type of school. They got to go to this school. They got to go to the best of the best school. They got to be in this. And so what happens is that we begin to steward the wrong way with our attitudes and our beliefs, or that desire or that lust for us to be ahead. I don't know how to, or we're competing. We're trying to be like this group of people, or I don't know how to really explain it, but it becomes a lust. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead.
I'm just agreeing with you. It's as simple as what Kalisha said. Kendra had posted.
Okay, I'll put it back.
It's you want what you want, regardless of what other folks want, regardless of what your spouse wants, regardless of anything else. It's a desire that you're pushing to the point of risking your relationships.
Yeah. I like that Amplified used the word, I don't know if I'm saying it right, hedonistic.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I looked it up because I was like, I remember that word, but I need a refresher. And it means a person whose life is devoted to the pursuit of pleasure and self-gratification.
Yeah. And that's a human, we're born that way, right? That's why children scream, right? Give me what I want right now.
Right now.
Right.
In marriage, we still have that. We still have that in us. We still have that in our flesh. And if we don't contend with it ourselves, then our spouse gets caught in the whirlwind of that.
Yeah. That's good.
There's a video of a little baby that's trying to touch this button. And he says, I want to quit my job. And the parent says no. And the baby goes, starts just start crying, because he can't get what he wants. But I truly believe that that's where, when you come to the end of yourself in marriage, and that's where I began to come to the end of myself. Then I began to see the value of what marriage really can bring out. Even with communication, that was one of the big that we had to learn how to talk with each other. And still to this day, we're still learning how to really talk to each other in a way where we get clear understanding. Now we had developed where we kind of like, I know this is what he's thinking, but we still clarify, we still don't want to assume. And but it's getting to the point where our communication is at a very high level, and we're able to say how we feel without hurting each other, and we can always pull our desires and what we want out because we want to benefit. It could be an agreement versus trying to get what I want out of something.
And I think that's being in a relationship for 25 years and still working on it. You know what I mean? It's something that's not the easiest thing to do. I was thinking earlier today, and I don't know if y'all feel like this is a true statement, but I was feeling like even like how we have love for real. Like the dream meets reality. Like what you've been like, oh, and then, oh, I'm married. Like, I was thinking about like how you are the thing you've been thinking about, even if it is, I don't know, a house, or I thought you were gonna do this, or I thought this is what marriage was gonna be. I feel like you kind of got to go through the 5 stages of grief with it.
That's good, Angie. That's really good.
There's denial. Like, no, this it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. Yeah, it's just, I'm just not gonna talk about it. We're just gonna put it under the rug. It's gonna be all right after a while. And then you got it under the rug, and then you get angry. Like, oh, okay, so you don't see? You don't see how I feel? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? And then comes the bargaining. Well, maybe if I do, then maybe you'll do that. And then I'm like, oh yeah. And then you get like, you have all these different things you go through until you get to a place of acceptance. And I think in marriage, the place of acceptance is being willing to accept it, humble yourself. And then what does this look like? Even if it's me having to die to self and accepting this is where I am at in life. What does that look like? And inviting God into me is key. I think even when we were talking about it before, the 4 of us, I was saying there's been seasons where I've had to go to God and be like, I need you to meet my needs. And I think sometimes that's the beautiful thing about being a child of God is we do have this third party in our marriage. You know what I mean? That we can go to, who we are made to be loved by God. We're made to be loved by him. So yeah. Just want to say that.
Yeah.
That was so well articulated, Angela. And so somebody asked about what are some tools. So one of the tools that is very practical is for you to sit down and write down what each one of you desire. So I think at the end of the day, that's what we're either fighting about,
That's
or
right.
Compromising on and communicating on. Like when Kendra and I sit down and, on a monthly basis or whenever we're getting paid, and we, let's say our annual meeting where we're like, this is what we want to go do for the year. Like I want to go to Jamaica, or I want to buy a car, or if you're not looking at the same page, you may have a desire in you and resent your spouse because you feel like they are preventing you from getting it when you never even said anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's where those fights and quarrels come from. A lot of times the other person's like, why are you mad? Right? What are you upset about? And you have never communicated to each other what your desires are. And even if the desire isn't selfish, it is a desire that you're charging forward. And if you're single, you don't need to be worried about the spouse. But if you're married, they need to know what those desires are, so that you're not pushing forward on it, being mad about it, fighting about it, and they don't even know.
Right. Because that is a thing. We do hear that in counseling quite a bit. Well, I thought he just knew. And it's honestly a lot of ladies compared to the men. But it's like, I thought he knew,
Well, he should know. I'm more here. It's like, oh, he should know. He should know exactly. We've been married for, that old song. If you don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. That's how we act in marriage. It's like, if you don't know me by now, you ain't gonna never know me.
And you got a scripture. Like you should, like, what is it? You should, like, what is it? Oh, it's a scripture.
Live with your wife according to knowledge.
That one. Yes, and that be getting folks in their feels. Like, you should know. You should have known by now. And then we'll ask in counseling, well, have you ever talked to him or her about it? Well, no, they should just know. And then we'll say, well, they're not mind readers. That's why it's communication. And then he'll say, assumption's not communication, because you're assuming they will know.
Come on now. Come on. Assumption is not communication.
Like this mad. You know what I mean? Like you are mad, but you haven't spoke how you feel or what you want or what you desire.
And that's the awesome thing when you're coming out of yourselves, is that you begin to see communication as a skill. Because sometimes we speak in vague generalities, and then we expect the other person to fully understand. Like, for me, use this example. Sometimes men are least expressive, sometimes, not all the time, but they're saying something, and the lady's like, okay, I got it, but I need more details. I need more meat on the bone, so to speak. You're just giving me a blueprint, but I would like to kind of know the details. And so that's something that when an expression like that or something's being communicated, that's where you say, I want to make the adjustment. I'm going to give you a little more details. Now, if I don't know how to do it, well, develop the skill set, you know, read a book, you know, take the time to write certain things out and say, you know what, this is what I meant by what I said right here. And so here's some of the details, you know, it could be as simple as, I don't know why this is the first thing that popped in my head, maybe because I'm a man, but it's like, but I want sex. Just say it, just say it. I want more sex, you know? And she said, well, okay, well, I need you to talk to me. I need you to communicate. I might need some flowers every now and then. I need you.
Yeah. But what can happen in marriage is the husband finally like, okay, I'm going to have a courageous moment. And I'm going to tell you, I would like to have more sexual intimacy. And the wife says, okay, but she doesn't say her part. Like, well, if you want that, then I need you to, I don't know, help me a little bit more. Yeah. Or I need you to, you know, can we schedule it? Because I'm over here working and managing the house, right? We won't say anything. And then now we're building resentment because we never communicated. We just heard that's what you want. And we're like, I want you to be happy. So I'm just going to take it. And then that builds resentment as well.
Yeah. I cook for you. You should know to wash the dishes and put the food up after I cook. You should know that. But obviously it's not there in your head. So no sex. No sex.
I wonder how many marriages have really gone to some ugly places just for the simple fact of what Vernon is in agreement with what you all are saying, is just because of unspoken expectations that we have. And I know that there are plenty of people who are like, I always say what my expectations are. I say them out loud. They aren't unspoken and they still not getting met, right? So I do understand that there are people that feel like I've said what I needed and nothing has changed.
But there's the thing that is said, and then there's the thing that you really mean that you didn't say.
Yeah, that's really good because
text and subject.
Yeah, sometimes anger seems like it's the prominent emotion at this particular time because I'm upset at you, but really there's something behind that anger. Yeah. There's rejection. There's something else, fear. And all that's it, but we're portraying anger, but it's really something else that we really need to.
Because anger is usually a secondary emotion, right? And I think is what the scripture Proverbs 13:12, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desired is fulfilled, it is a tree of life. And I think the key in marriage is how do we get there together? Because I think it can make your heart sick, meaning like I'm angry, I feel not heard, I don't feel listened to, I don't feel like I'm a priority to you. I mean, it can really go somewhere. And I think when people have expectations and they aren't met, it can be very hurtful.
Yeah, I do agree with Vern. A lot of time, delivery, presentation is so important because when we're trying to explain ourselves, again, one of the things I had to deal with was tone. And Angie didn't like the tone. She did not like the tone. And I didn't realize I had tone. I honestly, I'm just being passionate. I'm being who I am. This is who I am by the grace of God. Accept me. Accept me for who I am.
And if I bring it up, he'd be like, well, then I ain't gonna say nothing then because I'm just being me. And I'm like, I'm not saying you can't be you. I'm just saying, can you do it in a way that is less triggering? Where I can hear it a little bit better, you know?
Mm-hmm. I want to pause for a minute, and I want us to do a little commercial. Okay. So we want to do a commercial because we have something special that we are hosting in a few months. And so I want to give us a minute to be able to talk about that. and let people ask questions if they have questions. So I'm going to, in the comments, would y'all type drum roll, please? Or drum roll, just type drum roll. Okay. We'll pick the conversation back up. But all right, so we are hosting in June in beautiful Tempe, Arizona. We are hosting a marriage summit. And we are so excited about the marriage summit. We haven't done anything like this since we did the EXO marriage conference, right? I think that was the last time we did something like this. Is that right?
The XO conference or the Love for Real, the very first one?
Well, I thought the EXO was, oh, was it before that? Was it before the Love for Real?
Yeah, the
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so it's been about 5 or 6 years, right, since we've done this. And so, Bullocks, would you like to share with everyone what they can expect at the Love for Real Marriage Summit?
Sure. So we usually do, you guys know, we usually do a 1-day event. This is a 2-day event. Friday night is going to be a night of teaching you intimate touch in a very safe manner. Also teaching the power of non-sexual touch. We're bringing in a massage therapist to teach you different massages and different things that you can do on your spouse. Ain't nobody getting naked. It's gonna be in a safe environment, but we are teaching techniques that you can use on your spouse, because the whole weekend's focus is gonna be about intimacy, growing closer with your spouse, and all the different ways and different tools that you can grow in intimacy with your spouse. So I think when we usually think about intimacy, we usually think about sex, but God has given us for marriage. And just in relationships, period, there are different types of intimacy that we can use. If you ever think about setting desire and fire and passion, there's things that take place to get that going. And then there's things that take place to keep that fire going. That is what we're going to be talking about. So Saturday is going to be, we have amazing speakers we have planned for you guys, but it's going to be different because it's going to be a very interactive day. Meaning we're going to have some fun moments. We're going to have some fun icebreakers, activities. But I would say, I personally feel like whenever you go to a conference, it's a lot of activity and a lot of listening. But the activity may just be, okay, we got to go to this here, or we got to go to this breakout room, we got to go over here. This is really about listening to the speaker and having a moment to maybe go on a corner with your spouse and do an activity, or maybe at the table you're at, do an activity with your spouse and work on that specific topic that we're going over. So we're going to have fun topics. We're going to have a great time. And we're going to have workbooks for you guys, fill in the blanks, all that, so you can take it home and apply it. And we are just so excited. We believe that this is going to be a really life-changing event for people, not only to get the information, be surrounded by community, have some fun, but really be able to apply what we've been talking about tonight, tools, and getting free from some stuff so we can grow in intimacy with one another.
Yeah. So there will be workshops, and we're going to put your relationship, in a place where you get to work some things out. And so we're believing that just like we have here, refresh, rekindle, reignite, there might be some things that have drifted and departed, but you're going to refresh that. You're going to rekindle certain things. You're going to reignite it. And we believe that these workshops, just like she said, is something that you can take away, and it's something that you can do and continuously to do and continue to develop. So this becomes not only just a tool, becomes a resource for you, so that you can say, hey, let's do this after a date night. And it's something that you add to your marriage to enhance the communication. It's something that you add to your marriage that becomes something that might be even a tradition that you do and decide, this is what we do from now on, and this is how we conduct. And again, I like how she said it. A lot of times you go to particular events and there's a lot of people talking. Well, our speakers are going to talk for a short period of time, and then we're going to let you guys get involved in some activities. So please come on out. And if you're not able to make it, tell somebody else to make it out there. We believe that this is going to be a very powerful summit, even though it might be something that we haven't done in a long time, man. I believe it's going to be something that will knock it out of the park.
We are praying for the power of God to meet you guys right where you're at. Yep.
All right. All right. So yeah, we just wanted to do that quick commercial break. So the registration, you'll see different things happening through our email, our social media platforms, all that stuff, so that you can go ahead and get registered. We do have early bird pricing, and that will be what's limited. Our early bird pricing will be limited. So we hope you will not wait till the last minute to register. You will go ahead and do that, because you're gonna have the best deal in terms of everything that we're offering you if you go ahead and register and not wait until the last minute to register. So I just wanted to, a couple of things. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that has been, in the comments, sharing different thoughts with us. We really appreciate the engagement, because again, we're doing the Marriage Monday lives because we want to help you have better conversations with your spouse and have more intentional conversations with your spouse. And so, yeah, it's great. Like, we enjoy talking and chatting, the four of us. I mean, the four of us, we can talk to each other for hours, like literal hours. But it's more fun. And I think you actually get more from this live when other people are in the comments, sharing their thoughts, sharing their ideas. So, please keep showing up. Share this with other people that that you feel they could benefit from this. Let them know, encourage them to join us. We are here on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time every single week. With the exception, well, actually every week. And then on the third Monday of every month is when we have prayer. And that's when we do our prayer versus doing the live. And so I wanted to leave you with a few different questions. I'm going to share these questions, and then I'll let Daniel, Dennis, and Angie have the last word. But so here are some questions to help you locate your attitude and your heart's desire in marriage. I didn't have this question written down at first, but I'm so glad that Daniel mentioned this about, just the simple question of, what do you want? Like, what are your desires? Being willing to communicate with your spouse. Don't assume your spouse knows what your desire is. And so it'll be good for you to actually have the conversation. This might be a good date night conversation when y'all are relaxed and you just having fun. You're not paying bills. This might be a good question to ask. Another question to ask. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say on that question, and again, think a little bit deeper than just the any particular point. Like, oh, I wish he would wash dishes more. There's something deeper than that. Right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you need more support overall. Right. Mm-hmm. So think a little bit deeper in terms of what your desire really is.
And if you feel like that's a hard thing to do, meaning like sitting down with your spouse is not an easy conversation to share your heart, build rules of engagement. You know what I mean? Like, let's have some conversation. Let's go someplace public. Let's go someplace, that energizes us. Maybe someplace we love to go. And let's be like, what are the rules for this conversation if it's if in the past it's been difficult? Meaning, like, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to interrupt you for 5 minutes. I'm going to talk, and then you don't, to be able to give you the space to really say what you want to say. Sometimes having rules of engagement is helpful just to be able to have the conversation.
And I think another resource that people don't want to really talk about is investing in your marriage and going to counseling. Counseling is not necessarily, we're so bad and something's wrong with us. Mm-hmm. I think this is a great way to develop in skill set. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, especially when we're doing counseling, we're spending the time researching. We go to conferences, we get, go through continual education. I'm taking a class now on neuroscience. And so we want to bring out the best in the people that we're counseling. And we hopefully that we give perspective enough for you to say, you know what, I think that's really good. I want to implement it into my life. And so I believe that sometimes if you're feeling like I'm having a struggle communicating, seek out counsel. Seek out, talk with your small group and see what other people are saying, and raise the question. Because I know sometimes you don't want to be, want everybody to know all your business or anything like that. But hey, at least put yourself out there and invest in your marriage. There's so many different, there's conferences. Kendra said this podcast, there's so much that's out there. But I don't sleep on going to a counselor. Don't sleep on that, because hopefully the right counsel will give you enough perspective to whet your appetite to move on to your next in your relationship.
Because counseling gives those things. It gives perspective, it gives a neutral place, and it gives you tools. And so even I always tell people I'm a counselor who gives counseling, and my counselors are a huge blessing because they give me perspective that I just could not see, and they ask me questions that I just did not think of. And it helps me get over humps, difficult seasons.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna read this comment real quick from Kalisha. It's a difficult skill to communicate your wants and needs to a person who you pray and hope will respond a certain way. But when they don't respond the way we played it in our head, all hates breaks loose, and that breaks down all you built up. I'm very vocal, but I have learned to take it to God first, and he will help you get your desires in order. Then he prepares your spouse's heart and ears to receive. When I actually know what I want and I've already taken it to the Lord. So I thank you for sharing that, Kalisha. And I thought I wanted to just share that really quickly because it goes along with what we were talking about in terms of sharing your desires. Now, these last few questions, I want you to think about these questions as self-check, right? This is a reality check for yourself. Some few questions for you to think about on your own. Do I focus more on what my spouse isn't giving me rather than what I am contributing? So like, if you're honest with yourself, where do you put more of your focus? Is more of your focus on about what your spouse isn't giving you? Or is it more about what you are contributing to the relationship? So that's a question for you to check in with yourself. Another question for you to check in is, what are the underlying beliefs that you hold about marriage and relationships? I really, maybe in another Marriage Monday, we can go deeper with this. This is something that I think is very important for you to really be honest with yourself about what do you really believe about marriage? Like, what is the underlying belief that is helping you make decisions, helping you decide when to have those hard conversations or those courageous conversations with your spouse? What is the underlying belief that you have about marriage? And so that's something for you to really sit with and pray about. Another question is, what are the underlying beliefs I hold about marriage and relationships? Oh, wait, that was the same question because it was a different platform. Sorry. Are there unspoken vows or agreements that you've made that are affecting how you treat your spouse? We talked a lot about that tonight. There's a lot of unspoken things and agreements that we've made with ourselves about, well, I will never do so and so and so because I saw this person do this, or because my parent treated the other parent this way, or because this person in my family did this. So we all have these. This is not something that you are alone in. These are things every single one of us has to take a look at. And then the last question for you to consider and think about is, how can I shift my focus from what I need to what I can give? And I know that might be really hard to hear, but how can I shift my focus from what I need to what I can give? And I want you to automatically just assume that when we're talking about this, we're not talking about abusive, unhealthy relationships, right? So I don't think we have to say that. I think you all know us well enough to know that we're not advocating for or making excuses for unhealthy relationships. And so we're talking about in a loving relationship, how can you shift your focus from what you need to what you can give?
And on this one, you have to partner with God,
Mm-hmm.
because that is who promised us or said in His Word that it is more blessed to give than it is to receive.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we have to partner with Him and believe that that blessing that He is talking about will come about as we shift in that direction.
Good.
So Trina, I want to leave a question for you. So she says, we have done this. We gave ourselves an hour to talk. I write down all the things I want to share, and we are learning to allow the other person to talk and not interrupt. And what we have not addressed in the hour, we do come back to it. And I have the notes as reminders. So I want to say this because I'm the talker in our marriage. If y'all haven't guessed, I'm the talker. And it's important sometimes that there is one of the things I've learned, and I'm speaking for myself only, I'm not speaking for every person who's the talker. There is sometimes an anxiousness that I have about getting answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to learn how to manage my own anxiety versus putting my anxiety on to Daniel, so that me learning how to not always have answer. I won't always have an answer. A person is not always prepared to give you an answer, and that's okay too. And so some of it is us learning how to, in therapy terms, it's called regulation, right? Your emotional regulation. So you do have to learn in marriage how to regulate your own emotions. I say you have to learn this in every relationship. You have to learn how to regulate your own emotions. And so sometimes if you find that you are coming to these conversations wanting to you got a list of stuff, and this is not just for you, this is for everybody. Sometimes just narrow it down to one. What is the one thing that we can have a conversation about that we may not even have an answer to it when it's all said and done, but I feel heard and you feel heard. So some of this is just, we got to be patient with each other. And the prayer is that you're going to be together for the rest of your lives. So you have the rest of your life to figure out all this stuff, and you don't have to figure it all out in one conversation, because you're going to wear each other out if you are coming to a conversation trying to address every single issue and challenge that you see in your relationship. Okay. So I wanted to share that. So, and with that, do you all have any final thoughts before we end our time tonight?
I heard this today. It was from a pastor. He said when him and his wife first got married, they had these reasons for this and reasons for that. And then they found out that once they had these reasons, they realized they had conditions.
Mm.
And so all these conditions now that they have because of the reasons, and he says, we removed the reasons and now we don't have no more conditions. And so now I can love her unconditionally.
I love it.
So, and so I thought that was a very good way of thinking, is that sometimes we have, in order to serve each other, we have to remove some things out the way.
Mm-hmm.
Love our spouses unconditionally. The most important relationship that you'll have next to relationship with Jesus Christ is your marriage.
All right. Thank you for that mic drop moment, Dennis. All right. Babe, were you going to say anything before we go?
The only thing I'll just remind that we don't hold our spouses accountable for things that we never say.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother. Yeah, look at the men taking us out on the mic drop moment. So, all right, y'all. So we're going to wrap up our time tonight. And again, we thank you all for being here. And hopefully we will see you in June. Hopefully we'll see you a lot between now and June. But we'll also see you in June as well. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.